To continue our discussion about using number line with fractions, so in lesson 2 I want to show you how practicing with number line can then lead to a better understanding for adding fractions. We will do it for other things as well, like for example subtracting fractions, multiplying fractions. Number line can actually be used for most of those. But let's just have a think about adding and the type of exercises that you can do with your younger learners to make them tangibly understand the quantities of fractions and how they add up together. So if you remember, we said that it's always a good idea to start with say a bar of chocolate. So this would be 1/3 of a bar of chocolate. This, if I cut it here, that will be another third, and that will be another third. So 3 of them. So 3/3. 3 of the thirds types makes a whole bar of chocolate. Yeah. So when we count it, so if you have practiced it before, as a continuation of lesson 1, if you practiced it before, you count them. So this is 0. This would be 1/3. That would be 2/3, and that would be 1 whole one. And then if you count on, it would be 1 and 1/3, 1, 1 and 2/3, and then 2, and so on. So you do this practice with your younger learners a number of times, so they become quite fluent with seeing this in their heads rather than on paper. So 2 and 2/3, and then 3, and so on, and it just carries on. Yeah. So if that's 4, the next to it would be 4 and 1/3, and 4 and 2/3, 4 and 2/3, and that would be 5. Okay. So when we're adding 2/3 to 2/3, that would be 2/3 here. So that's 2/3, and we're adding another 2/3 to it, which gets us here. It gets us here. So the answer of 2/3 plus 2/3 is 1 whole one and a third. So that kind of practice is quite useful. So let's, for example, do something else. So what about 1/3 plus 2/3? Yeah. So that would be a nice starting point. So 1/3, which would be up to here, and then add another 2/3 to it, and that gets you to 1 whole one. Yeah, so the answer to this one is 1 whole. Or something like, for example, 1 and 1/3 plus another 1/3. So what does that equal to? So 1 and 1/3 is here, and we add another 1/3 to it. So that would be 1 and 2/3. Yeah. Let's get rid of this and put some examples here. So for example, if we say that we have 1 whole one and we subtract from it a third, what do we get? So this is 1 whole one. If you subtract a third from it, you arrive at the third below it, which is 2/3. And then you can then step up. So for example, then you could test them on something like 2 and 2/3 plus 1 and 2/3. Yeah. So 2 and 2/3 is here. Then you have to take a leap of 1 whole one and 2/3. So really, if you just imagine the 2 and the 1 gets us to 3, so 2 and the 1 gets us to 3, and then you have 2/3 and 2/3, which will have a 1 whole one in it and a third. Yeah, because if you remember, we said 2/3 and 2/3 makes 1 whole one and a third. So 2 and 1 makes 3. That's already there. And then we got these 2/3 and 2/3 which needs to be added together, and that has a 1 jump there, 1 jump, and another third. So the answer to this one would be 4 and 1/3. Yeah, on the subtraction you can do the same thing. So for example, for subtraction you could start from 5 and take away 2/3 from it and see what answer they would get for you. Or even you can go outside of the visible number line. So, start with, say, 10 and ask them what would 10 be if I take 1 and a third from it. So then they have to visualize it because 10 isn't actually on the screen here. So it would be starting from 10. So you take 1 away from it, you arrive at 9, and then another third, which takes you into 8. So that would be 8 and 2/3. So back and forth on the number line, using these exercises, starting with easy and then gradually making them stretch their imagination as how these things would put together. It makes the understanding of the quantities of fractions when you're adding them or subtracting them, make it easier for them to comprehend. And then, of course, the next step would be maybe looking at fifths and sevenths and move on. I might do that in the next lesson.